I've been told by everybody up on this roof that they're all off the roof. I am on the roof of exposure 4. Got fire through the roof of the 5 million, the entire rear section.
Now remember, given the payday, has he been accounted for? Okay. 610B, that was the name date, 610B.
I'm here. We got a fire. 1.5-story, single-family dwelling. Fire shown from the 2nd floor. Give me a second alarm on this.
Up to the top floor, I got people hanging out the top floor windows with a baby.
Commercial building, a lot of fire, a lot of smoke. Go ahead and strike a 3rd alarm on my orders on this.
Got people on the front fire escape here with windows vented below them. We need somebody up there.
Yeah, let them know we got a job. I'm pulling up now. 2nd alarm, I got a 1-story single-family frame. Heavy fire showing from the attic.
So we're using all hands. We got 1 line stretch, fire on the 4th floor, 2nd line being stretched. Primary searches are underway.
All right, hey everybody, this is Old School. I'm Chief Rick Lasky along with my partner Chief John Sulka, and we've got a very special guest with us today. We have Chief Lovett from the Marianna, or Chief, how am I supposed to say it again?
Well, it depends on if you have a southern accent. If you've got a southern accent, you say Marianna.
Marianna. Okay,
yeah,
I've got that going.
It's Marianna. So.
Marianna, Florida. Chief is partnered up with CSU, and they are hosting one of our company officer academies here, and it's been a great couple of days. I mean, great hosts. Your guys have been awesome.
Great crowd, great crowd.
Oh, great! Another great crowd. Mimi's
Absolutely.
doing great for us. Chief, you know, and before we talk about some things here, because obviously you can't drive around town without seeing the signs that you guys went through really bad, along with a lot of other people in the state here, Florida, hurricane. But a little bit about you. You know, how long you been with the department and family in the fire service?
I started in 1994, my senior year in high school when I turned 18. The chief took a gamble on me, rolled the dice, and here I was, this young kid, you know, and he allowed me to volunteer with some on-the-job training. That was before we had the Firefighter 1, Firefighter 2 stuff. And so I graduated high school, went to EMT school at Chipola here at the local college, and then I got a job down in Tampa. My uncle was a captain with Tampa Fire at the time, and he hooked me up with a job with the private ambulance service. And in '97, I came home to visit, 1997, and the chief called me in and said, "Hey, come in here, I want to talk to you." And he offered me a job and said,
Nice.
"Be here March 27th." And here I am 20-plus years later, guiding the ship, you know. And,
You're the boss now, man.
So, you know, I've been the boss going on, I think, 6 years. So,
Chief is 6 years. Okay.
yeah, so I've survived a 5-year curse, you know. So,
well, and you guys, you know, John, and we were driving around. John, you were like, I mean, you know, we've seen devastation from hurricanes before. We've been around for a lot of this stuff. But the amount of force that had to be generated around here to see not only the damage to the buildings, but whole trees in wooded areas, not just a tree here and a tree there out in the middle somewhere where the wind, we're talking just everything snapped off.
Big old tree snapped right off.
And seeing in the recovery effort, so when did that happen?
October the 10th. You know, I'm not big on dates and remembering dates. I struggle with even my own birthday sometimes, but October the 10th is something that a day that I'll never forget. And you know, it was a challenging time for us because, you know, in the fire service we prepare for everything. You know, automobile accidents, fires, and commercial fires and stuff like that. But there's no manual in the academy that teaches you how to deal with a hurricane and how to respond. And so
I haven't seen the IFSTA book on that one yet.
Right.
Maybe. I mean,
so,
I'm sure it's out there somewhere.
So, you know, we were, you know, faced with that challenge of, you know, not knowing what to do and how to do it. So, you know, once we started out, the first thing was to get the streets open to the hospital because we were planning for, you know, injuries, fatalities. And in my mind, I prepared myself because this is a small town. We're a town about 10,000 residents.
And you and I were talking too, right? About, you know, it's one thing this happens in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Sarasota Bay, but we're talking there's a lot of small communities that we kind of forget about that have limited resources, right. and sure. You know, normally for a fire they would pull the resource together, but a lot of people are affected with
right.
this.
And this thing moved in real fast on us, and you know, it grew real fast, real quick, and normally they come up in the Gulf, they hook left or right, and we're okay. We get a little bit of wind and rain and some trees down, but we can deal with that. But the eye came through Marianna, and we're about 60 miles from Panama City Beach inland, and we saw significant winds that we've never seen before.
And lay this out for we're kind of at the northern part of the state here.
Right.
We're how far are we from? A lot of people know where Pensacola is, right?
We're about 60 miles north of Panama City Beach. We're about 120 miles east of Pensacola, and we're about 80 miles west of Tallahassee.
Okay.
So is it sort of like near the elbow?
Right. Our state is the only state in Florida that borders Georgia and Alabama.
Okay.
We're right up, half of our county borders Alabama, and the other half borders Georgia.
Now, how many stations and folks do you have on duty to handle this?
We've got 2 stations. We cover 19 square miles, and we've got approximately 27 people. We've got 17 full-time, and then we've got 10 reserves. So,
and you guys are saying, I mean, like we said, obviously well-run departments rely on their neighbors. I know we do to help us out through automatic aid, mutual aid, and so on and so forth. And we were talking about storms where I was interim chief. It's like the cloud, it wasn't just over us. Everybody was strapped. Everybody was running emergencies.
Right.
And it puts you, how much, I'll say this, how much time, because I know, unlike tornadoes that just can pop up, we've got some time to plan for hurricanes and we detect, but how much time did you have leading up to that? And I know it's kind of not exact science because things can change and you do all that planning and all of a sudden done come to you, but how much?
What do you do in preparation? Call people in and stuff?
Right,
or no?
we backfill. We had about 2 days to really, get things going, and we start scratching our head when they're saying, we got the report from the National Weather Center, and we was like, wait a minute, we need to ramp our stuff up because this thing is coming straight for us. And, once we were, 24 hours out, we knew it was going to be bad. And so here we are, several months later in the recovery stage of it. And I tell you, our state director was tremendous in getting us help. It made me seem like a rock star when all the companies started rolling through the neighborhoods when nobody else had help. And, our comrades came to our aid, and it was just a blessing.
Chief, what did you have? I know it's hard to put the exact finger or thumbprint on things, but let's talk about damage because, like I said, we've been here for a few days now, and like regular fast food everything. The signs are obliterated, and the blue tarps we see before on different places in homes and businesses, but there's still a tremendous amount. So when all was said and done, and you did everything, what did you see significantly in the way of damage to
including your facilities?
Well, our facilities were okay. We didn't take much damage. We had a little bit of roof damage, but the structural integrity of our buildings were okay. So we were able to operate out of our stations. We had backup generators. So, a year before, I had an agreement with the power company that they can stage their vehicles at our other station because we've got a lot of room out there. And so they got us power as soon as they could at our second station. So we were able to operate, as long as we kept the generator full of diesel, we were okay. So,
how long? I'm sure you mandated everybody back.
Oh yeah.
How long did you keep folks afterwards?
Well, once the strike team got here, we started sending people home. I had to make them go home.
Sure, but they got families and homes as well.
And one of the problems we encountered was they couldn't get home because there were so many roads blocked with trees because we're a rural area. And
could fly them in the chief's helicopter, couldn't you?
Yeah, the chief owns a helicopter.
Well, they say with the interstate, where parts of it just shut down because there's so many trees across.
Right, there were interstate, so it created a challenge for resources to even get to us. And but I want to tell y'all something that really will blow your mind. The county was in transition in between fire chiefs, so they didn't have a chief. And the previous chief worked for me, so I knew he knew how to operate in the EOC. He knew his way around things. Well, they had a guy standing in that was a correction officer for the whole county that knew nothing about the fire service. And so that created a challenge with, operating all the 11 volunteer units that we have in our area. So that was another element of dealing with the hurricane that we had to deal with.
Just on you because the other guy was absent. Yeah.
And so it was a huge burden on me and my guys. But I tell you, this was an experience that I'll never forget, and I can put this on a resume now.
Oh, boy, oh, boy, you can.
Well, and it's one like we're doing now that you can share, because I told you we've had, our good friend Rich Collins has started out with us in Illinois in the South Side of Chicago. Down, he's emergency services director now in Sarasota after spending time in Osceola County. We had him, some of the big OEM guys and everything. A while back when they had the tornadoes hitting on the East Coast, it was supposed to hit Virginia, North Carolina. I said, well, let's not. Florida's good right now. Because you don't want to bother. Let's get some folks on to talk about. Okay, let's talk about preparation, policies. Take care of your families ahead of time so your firefighters can, concentrate on their jobs. Like you said, you have to shoo away because they're so dedicated.
Right.
They want to finish the job, and you got to give them a break. They don't know it sometimes because they go. But to be able to share your experiences, and that's why John said we got to get Chief on. Last night we said we got to get Chief on. Just talk about this, and we all see the news and we see what happens with FEMA and the Red Cross and different things like that. But able to talk to a boss like yourself and go, okay, if there was a handful, maybe top three things. We're sitting in a room and there's a bunch of people who said, Chief, you know what? I'm a new chief here. I'm a new chief here. I'm a new chief here. Give me your top three lessons learned, or what would you tell me as a new fire chief? Look, if this ends up coming your way one day, this is what I learned. This is what you need to, I'm sure planning went into that. But if you could, maybe one or two or three, what would you say?
The first thing I would advise a new chief is to join the Fire Chiefs Association in your area. And because I knew these chiefs that was coming to help us on a personal level, we had set a venue, setting a class together. And when you join a Fire Chiefs Association, for us, I'm a small agency, but I can sit next to the chief of Tampa, the chief of Orlando, and talk to them about, my little issues, and with the employees and things that they have to deal with. There's nothing that I will encounter that they haven't dealt with.
And now they're a phone call away because you know the guy.
Right, because I know him.
Yeah, text message.
So I would encourage, a new chief to join the State Fire Chiefs Association. The second thing that I would encourage them to do is know where your resources are going to come from with your SERP and all the other things that, from other states.
Yeah, right,
and, learn those and know where they're coming from and learn the people, go to their association meetings and things like that, because people are more apt to come help people that they know.
Yes.
When I know, Chief Bruner or Chief Lovett needs help and I know him on a personal level, I'm going to send what I can to help him out.
And some of the stuff in the old days, Chief, was everybody kind of stayed to themselves. You had a couple buddies you went to coffee with, but there wasn't as much in the way of networking, like you're saying, with chiefs that you're living proof that works.
Right, and those guys that showed up on those engine companies knew that I knew their boss on a personal level. Right. They went above and beyond because they wanted to represent their agency in a manner to where it was satisfactory to the guy that I knew.
Yeah, and go the other way next time.
And next time, it could be us sending resources to them.
So here's a question: what kind of support did you get from the city, from your bosses, like financial, for overtime or equipment or keeping people on?
Just because FEMA was going to reimburse us, we had to keep track of all the callbacks,
the paperwork
support, and my administrative assistant was awesome in doing that, and she had to do a little bit of it from home, but
so no roadblocks,
she was blocked in. Yeah? There was no way of her getting out. She was blocked in because where she lives is like a two-trail road, so she was blocked in for 3-4 days, and so she had to walk to the end of her trail to get to the main road. So, but that was one of the challenges that we faced, was keeping up with all the runs and everything, and our comm center helped us out in doing that. They hand wrote everything down. So at the end, we came back and we went through all of that stuff. And
what was your casualties in the end? Any civilian deaths?
Back when I was saying I had prepared myself, because we're a rural community, close knit, everybody knows everybody, to put people in body bags that I knew, and that didn't happen. Thank God, we didn't have a single fatality. During the storm. Now, they attribute heart attacks and people cleaning up. We did have 2 people that died from a tree falling on them, and we had one guy that was cleaning up his yard and had a heart attack and died. And they attribute that to the storm.
Of course. But not to the emergency part.
I'm just amazed looking at the damage.
Looking at the damage, I knew we were going to have anywhere from 25 to 30 fatalities.
I was thinking a dozen or 2
I had
dozen.
prepared myself for that.
Yeah. But you gotta, and then you get pleasantly surprised.
Right,
Expect for the worst and hope for the best and expect the worst.
Absolutely.
Right?
Well, and you said something, Chief, I want to key in on, because I know this is a big lesson for a lot of chiefs in Texas that practice this with, doing the hurricanes and all the other stuff that happens, whether it's wildland, wherever you're at. You mentioned FEMA, which is a great organization that really does support and help what we do. But without a emergency preparedness plan in place, without knowing where the paperwork is, because people are like, they pay. You've got to if you want to get reimbursed or whatever. Not only that, for your community,
right?
You want to do this so the people live in your community will qualify for FEMA support and FEMA reimbursement and grants or whatever to get them back on their feet. And the fire department, all that money. People just don't. It just doesn't happen out of thin air. You've got to do the paperwork. You've got to know, and it's kind of like we talk about the NIMS stuff and things, and people make fun of stuff. And I'm going, if NIMS did anything for me, it showed all the people outside fire and police what we need done. When we all need to come together, it shows finance.
Right.
Look at your role and look at and it's about the paperwork. You can argue about terminology all you want, because that was a big thing, but the paperwork that you got to do to make sure you get to rebuild.
That's a huge element of it, not passing that burden on to the taxpayers. And so we've been good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, and some
like
good,
that phrase.
Some good has come out of it. A lot of people were in a lot better shape than they were. We had to suffer for a couple of months, but I know people that had good insurance, and like I say, they're in a lot better shape than they were.
And for those that fly into Florida, I'll just say Florida, because you guys are so dialed in on hurricane responses. Obviously, it's like the West Coast is in California when it comes to wildland.
Earthquake too.
Earthquakes. You guys are absolutely amazing at what you accomplished during this. And you can fly into some parts of Florida. You fly in an airport, you look down, and 2 years later, you still see blue tarps on top of houses and buildings. This isn't as quick as a recovery effort or response or effort, I should say, results-wise. It's in process,
right?
But it takes a long time to mitigate this whole thing and see it through. Not just, we'll be ready to go in 3 months. This takes a long time to make it all happen.
And I preach to our citizens patience. And it's, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You've got to do that. And we're going to look at where we are from the time the storm hit to where we are the following year. And I think we're in pretty good shape with all of our infrastructure. We do have a lot of roads that need repair because they lifted the weight limits. You got to take into account that you have trucks hauling over 80,000 pounds and moving debris. You've got a lot of them, around. We did have some issues at some of the sites that they set up because, a lot of the ash, they were burning, so they had to shut a couple of sites down. But for the most part, the operation went well. We had the proper resources in place and, cell phone service. We were thrust into doing things that wasn't in our job description. For instance, we had to clear a road so that the gas truck can get into the tower where the cell phone tower was, to put gas in.
Beyond the normal scope of our operations.
Right. So when the city manager called me, he was like, "Hey, this is what we got to do, Chief." "Yes, sir. We're going to make it happen."
Yeah, you got to stretch it a little bit.
I rounded up some guys from Division of Forestry with their bulldozers, and we went in. We did it.
Did any big companies around that employed a lot of folks and stuff pack up and leave after the storm?
No.
Lose any big ones?
We didn't. We have some industry here, but we didn't lose a whole lot. There are some businesses that's been here for over 40, 50 years that's not coming back. And it has the sentimental element to it for our town. And
some of that was the tipping point where I know a lot of businesses are just making it through, making it by day to day. And it's like you see it with fires. All of a sudden they suffer loss and There's no coming back from this.
There's no coming back. And,
Great.
you know, we had a tire store here, and several years ago, they had a large fire that, you know, devastated their business. You know, they lost just about everything. And now, you know, several years later, here we are again, and I don't think they're going to rebuild. Yeah. And, you know, it was one of the landmarks in our city. Everybody knew that tire store. And it's just the mental aspect of not seeing things that used to be here.
For so long.
For so long.
Yeah. And Chief, you mentioned one of the key things we talked about is the disaster management, debris management.
Right.
You know, much smaller scale, but the bridge collapse in Minnesota, which, you know, when you go to these classes, you go to NIMS class, you go to whatever, and they do okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be downtown, large metropolitan area, large city, and the main artery coming in from this whole part of the state, a bridge is going to collapse. When it collapses, it's going to collapse on top of the main railway for that service, everything for freight and passenger, and it's collapsed on top of a river where the barges go up and down, and there's going to be cars and Really, what else? Is a plane going to crash? And you're like, really? And that's what happened in Minnesota. And I remember Rocco Forte, the chief that was Minnesota's fire chief, who went into OEM right after that. The key for him with being successful was his debris management. Where do you put this stuff? Where do we move all this stuff and then be able to, whether it's burn it off or haul it away or do what we got to do to get rid of it? The debris, like you said, the debris management, it's huge. You can't just, well, what do we do with it? You've got to have a place to move, store, there's got to be a big area you could dump all this
right.
to get all these things cleared out so you can get in and out, and then now you got to manage that stuff,
Right.
And that's huge, having that plan.
Yeah, so you got to put that in your plan, the debris management. Law enforcement, that was a huge element. We got enough law enforcement officers here that came to assist our agency, our city, and we didn't have big problems with looting.
I was just going to ask that. Did you have any criminal
We
activity?
had those guys from Miami. They were awesome, and Davie, Florida. We had one incident where they caught a looter, and after that, because those guys were jam up, and as we say in the South, jam up and jelly tight.
That's right.
And,
how about, I know with tornadoes, I know with a lot of hurricanes, one of the things for a lot of our listeners, a lot of things people don't realize. I remember this, my buddy Vince Satella got his whole house blown away. I mean, bunch of fatalities and everything else in Illinois. Twister 91, a bad time. Killed a whole bunch of people and everything else. But nails from buildings.
Tires, yeah.
Everybody trying to respond it out is getting flat tires because there's nails everywhere.
Wow.
And having those people, we had to have tire repair places like guys there because you're driving emergency vehicles and everything, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I would advise anybody that's getting ready for a hurricane to prepare for if it's bad, because we purchased 3 tire kits with plugs, and every one of our vehicles had to have a plug at some point in time. And there were people on the side of the road because they ran over a nail from, even 3 months after, we were picking up nails.
Millions
because
of nails, not
you've got all
thousands,
these
millions.
roofers hauling debris to the landfill.
Just dropping off the trucks.
And they're dropping off the trucks, and
And it's something you never think about.
You don't even think about that.
I never thought about till that incident,
Maybe we
Chief.
should go buy a truck and get a big magnet on it and then just drive
There you
around
go.
the streets.
Hey, I'm telling you.
They need to add that to the
When you
plan,
think about, hey,
you know?
we got to get in there, we got to get our vehicles in there. You could take
Police,
this
right?
subdivision.
Ambulances with flats?
Oh,
You're
yeah.
going to have to drive this subdivision. All next you know, flat tire. Well, Chief, first of all, John, I can't thank you enough for joining us, especially here. Actually, at lunchtime, we stole some time from the boss. But Chief Lovett from Marianna Fire Department in Florida. Chief, if there was another chief or somebody that said, you know what, I got to pick up, I want to see if he's ever got time, I can chat on the phone, or if you're not too far, what would be the easy email for them to get a hold of you?
Email, or you can call me on my cell phone, 850-573-6351, or you can just go to our city website, City of Marianna, and click the fire department, and you'll see my email there, and you can email me. And I would love to talk, to share my experience with anybody, and score them forward. It would maybe help them out
Great.
planning for a hurricane. So
Pass it forward,
I want to share my knowledge and the things that we went through. And I also want to say thank you for you guys coming here, a wealth of knowledge to share, with our community and our guys, and I really appreciate being amongst two rock stars of our industry. And so I just want to say thank you for that.
We're honored with that. And your guys make it easy, Chief. Your guys make it easy. They have made this, you've been great hosts.
Yes.
Sometimes we go places and they're not really involved and you kind of have to find your way. Your guys, you've been sitting here, we've said it before, and this is nice and loud, to the chiefs out there that find time to not spend time with their people.
A lot of places we go, we never see the chief. We see a lot of people, we never see the chief.
In uniform, visiting with the troops, with other people and everything else. You've been an incredible host, Chief, and thank you so much. We can't thank you enough, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you,
man.
Been a pleasure. Been a pleasure.
Hey, we've been visiting with Chief Lovett from the Marianna Fire Department, Marianna, Florida, about prior to and making it through the hurricane here and all the damage. And another great example of a boss who gets it. John and I talk about people who get it and people who don't. And the good chief here is one that gets it. And that's it, buddy. We'll wrap this one up.
We'll see you on the next episode of
Old School.
Old School.
Old School. Oh, yeah. We'll see you at the next Old School. Hey, as we end all our shows, just remember this thought: never forgetting means never forgetting.